I'd taken that route home hundreds of times. That night was the first time I wished I hadn't. I'm 27 and I live in Denver, Colorado. I close out the front desk at an emergency room 3 nights a week, which means my shift doesn't end until midnight. And by the time I actually get moving, it's closer to 1 in the morning before I'm on my way home. Most nights, that's just background noise to me. I've been doing this route long enough that I stopped noticing it. That night, I noticed everything. The light rail was close to empty, maybe 6 other people scattered across 2 cars. I picked a seat near the middle doors, the way I always do, and didn't think about it again until a man got on at the next stop and sat down in the seat directly across the aisle from me. Not near me, across from me, with 4 completely open rows behind him and 3 in front. I kept my eyes on my phone, but I was watching him in the black reflection of the window glass. He wasn't doing anything. That was the strange part. No phone, no bag, nothing to occupy his hands. He just sat there, very still, facing my direction. We both got off at my regular transfer stop, which meant nothing on its own. It's a hub. Half the train empties out there. I actually remember feeling a little embarrassed for clocking him at all. I'd seen him earlier, before the train even came, standing near the far end of the platform by the signage for the route that runs north, the opposite direction from mine. So when he peeled off toward my bus stop instead, I told myself he'd probably just misread the board, or changed his mind, or any of the dozen boring explanations that cover almost everyone you ever notice on public transit. Then the night bus pulled up, and he got on it behind me. That's the part I couldn't explain away. Not the train, not even sitting close on the train. It was watching a man who'd been standing under a sign for a different route, going a different direction, end up on the exact bus I take 4 nights a week. A bus that runs so infrequently after midnight that missing it means a 40-minute wait. I sat down near the front. He sat 3 rows back, close enough that I could hear, every few seconds, a strange rhythmic clicking, his knuckles cracking one at a time, over and over, like he was counting something out on his fingers. Halfway down the block from my stop, I stopped walking entirely, pulled out my phone, and pretended to take a call. If he was behind me by coincidence, he'd have no reason to stop too. He'd just keep going, the way anyone would. He didn't stop. He walked straight past me without slowing down, close enough that I caught the smell of cigarettes on his jacket, and kept going another 30, maybe 40 feet before he angled off toward the parking lot of the strip mall on the corner, like that had been his plan all along. For a second, I actually believed I'd been wrong. Then, half a block later, I glanced back and he was behind me again. Not rushing. Just there, the same distance he'd kept the whole bus ride, like he'd looped through the lot and picked the exact same spot in line behind me without missing a step. That's when I stopped believing in coincidence. My apartment building sits back from the street, behind a stretch of closed storefronts with a covered breezeway that cuts through to a parking structure underneath. It's usually fine. It's lit, mostly, except for the stretch right before the stairwell door, where the bulb's been dead for weeks and the building never seems to get around to fixing it. I didn't go that way. Instead, at the last second, I cut left into the 24-hour pharmacy on the corner, the only thing still open on that stretch, and walked straight to the back, past the pharmacy counter, toward the second exit that lets out onto the side street behind the building. It's a shortcut almost nobody uses. I only knew about it because I'd cut through there during a rainstorm once, months earlier. I came out the side door into the alley behind my building, the one that runs parallel to the breezeway, and for a second, I actually let myself relax. The alley was empty. No one ahead of me, no one at the stairwell door. I remember thinking, stupidly, that I'd actually managed to lose him. I got maybe 15 feet before I heard it. That same clicking close behind me, closer than it had any right to be. I hadn't heard footsteps. I hadn't heard the side door open again. But when I turned, he was less than 10 feet back, moving at the same steady pace, but much closer than I expected him to be. Like he'd cut through the breezeway on the other side of the pharmacy while I was congratulating myself on losing him, and had simply closed the gap while I wasn't looking. He didn't slow down when I stopped, didn't speed up either, just kept closing the gap at the same steady pace, still cracking his knuckles, one at a time. I didn't wait to see how close he'd let himself get. I turned around and went back the way I came. I know the overnight pharmacist there, Dara, from a shared shift years ago when I used to work weekends at the front counter myself. I came back through the side door fast enough that he was already standing up before I said anything. The chime on the front door went off behind me half a second later. The man had followed me back inside. He didn't come past the first aisle. He just stood near the entrance, muttering something low and clipped, watching the two of us over the shelf of cold medicine between us. Dara came around the counter and put himself squarely in front of me. "You need to leave the store," he said. His voice didn't shake at all, which surprised me more than anything else that night. Now. The man didn't move right away. Dara's hand had already dropped to the panic switch mounted under the counter. Required, he told me later, ever since a robbery 2 years back, and for a few long seconds, nobody in that store moved at all. Then, as suddenly as he'd appeared behind me on the bus, the man turned and walked back out into the dark, and by the time I made it to the window to check, the street outside was empty. 2 officers came by the next afternoon to pull the pharmacy's camera footage. It didn't take them as long as I expected to put a name to his face. He wasn't a stranger who'd noticed me at random. They told me his name had come up before in complaints involving women on that same rail line. That was as far as anyone would go. No facility, no diagnosis, nothing that made the ending feel resolved. Just a name that already existed in a file somewhere, attached to reports that had never added up to anything until now. I still take the same train. I still get off at the same stop. I still pass that pharmacy most nights. I just don't think of it as a shortcut anymore. Most overnight shifts at that hotel were forgettable. This one wasn't. I was a night auditor at a boutique hotel off Route 9, the kind of place with exposed brick, a converted 1920s facade, and just 31 rooms across 3 floors. Old bones, new paint. The kind of place people booked when they wanted something quieter than a chain hotel. I worked the 11 to 7 shift alone. Just me, the front desk, and a bank of 6 CCTV monitors tucked behind the counter where I ran audits, checked reservations, and mostly stared at nothing until sunrise. When I clocked in that night, the system already showed a full house by our standards. 11 rooms occupied. One of them checked in that afternoon through the app before my shift even started. Room 327. Mobile key, no front desk contact, no face I'd ever seen. I didn't think anything of it. Half our guests check in that way now. It should have stayed that way. A name on a screen, nothing more. At 11:40, I glanced up at the second floor hallway camera on a routine cycle and saw a man standing outside room 118. Not the room the app had assigned him. He was heavyset, silver-haired, wire-rimmed glasses, wearing a gray cardigan over a collared shirt. The kind of guy you'd peg for a traveling insurance adjuster, not a threat. He had a hard-shell wheeled suitcase parked beside him instead of anything worn on his back. He wasn't trying his key. He was holding something small and black, flat against the lock plate, not much bigger than a garage remote. He held it there for 4 or 5 seconds, then moved to the next door. And the next. I sat forward, stomach tightening. I had no idea what the device actually was. I just knew he wasn't trying to get into any of these rooms. He was working his way down the hall, door by door, unhurried, like he was checking off a list only he could see. Then he reached the stairwell fire door at the end of the hall. He crouched, and from the suitcase, he took out a thin strip of something metallic and pressed it into the door's edge, right against the latch plate. He tested the door with 2 fingers. It didn't click shut. It just drifted open, unlatched from a mechanism no one would notice unless they leaned on it. That door was supposed to be secured at all times. Now, it wasn't. For the next half hour, he didn't reappear on any camera at all, which was worse than watching him. I didn't know where he was. I pulled up the reservation for 327 again and stared at it, half expecting the name to mean something. It didn't. At 12:45, he appeared on the lobby camera and walked straight toward the front desk, stopping just out of sight of the counter itself. He looked directly up into the camera mounted above me and held there for a long 2 seconds, like he wanted me to know he'd clocked exactly where I was sitting. Then the lobby lights died. Not flickered, cut, all at once. My monitors went black in the same breath, the desk computers hummed, dropping to silence. Emergency lighting kicked on a few seconds later, dim red strips along the baseboards, barely enough to see by. Later, I learned he'd gone straight for the electrical panel in the utility alcove and killed the breaker feeding the front office. I heard the suitcase wheels on tile, close now, coming around the side of the counter into the employee-only space behind the desk. I didn't wait to see him clear the corner. I backed into the office behind the desk, pulled it shut, and turned the lock. Through the narrow glass panel, I watched him step into the space I'd just left and go straight to the key cabinet mounted under the counter. He typed something into the keypad. I couldn't see how many digits or whether he got it right on the first try, and a few seconds later, the cabinet was open. He lifted out the hotel's master key card, the single card that opened every room in the building. That's when I called 911, keeping my voice as steady as I could get it. A man had gotten into the building. He'd been using some kind of electronic device on the room locks, and he now had our master key. I gave the address twice and told them he was heading for the stairwell. Through the glass, I watched him slide the card into his cardigan pocket and roll the suitcase toward the door, the same one he'd jammed open hours before. I stayed in that office with the line open. The desk monitors were still dead, so I couldn't see anything after that. I just listened. I heard the stairwell door swing shut down the hall. I told the dispatcher I thought he'd gone up, not out, and that his own room was on the 3rd floor. For a few minutes, there was nothing. Then, faintly, through the walls, I heard the lobby doors and voices, and not long after that, shouting somewhere above me, muffled, 2 floors up, gone almost as soon as it started. It was another 10 minutes before someone knocked on the office door and told me it was safe to come out. I got the rest later, in pieces, from an officer who came back to walk me through the report. They'd found him on the 3rd floor, near room 341, with the master key still in his hand. His suitcase held flex cuffs, a spring-loaded glass punch, and a folded set of bolt cutters small enough to sit flat against the lining. There was also a printed page with a guest's name, room number, and check-in time on it. I was told none of that had come from anything I'd entered during my shift. I worked that building alone every night and thought I knew every weak point it had. He knew them before I ever saw his face. I was 20 when I learned what it feels like to be hunted in your own neighborhood. Not movie scared, but scared in a way where your body acts before your brain catches up. This happened 2 years ago. I still walk through it in my head before I fall asleep. I grew up in a quiet suburban pocket of a mid-sized city. Rows of 2-story houses, small yards, a street lamp every 50 feet. Nothing about it suggested danger. Because of my parents' work shifts, it was normal for me to have the house to myself. I worked closing shifts at a hardware store nearby. That Thursday, my shift ran late. Due to road construction, I had to take a detour home, past shuttered shops and the edge of a park. Cold, tired, annoyed, nothing more. Then the streetlights died. Not flickered, died. The whole block going black in under 2 seconds. I froze. There was no wind, no storm. The whole block went dark like a switch had been thrown. Halfway down the street, near a utility box, I saw two shapes. One held a tool. A third figure jogged out, carrying a long case. Down near my neighbor's driveway sat an unmarked van, idling with its lights off. I stood there a beat too long. One of them looked up and saw me. In the silence that followed, all of them broke into a dead sprint toward me. I didn't think, I ran. I cut across a lawn, hit my front walk, and miraculously got the key into the lock with shaking hands. I threw myself inside and locked the door in one fluid motion. Standing in the dark hallway, chest heaving, I waited for the door to explode inward. Nothing came. After 2 minutes, I peeked through the curtain. Empty street, no van, no shapes. I called the police immediately. The dispatcher's tone shifted the moment I mentioned the cut utility box. Half an hour later, an officer arrived. He walked the perimeter, checked for boot prints, and admitted carefully that this wasn't the first tampered box in the area. The power came back around 1 a.m. I lost consciousness near dawn on the couch, holding a kitchen knife. The next morning, the neighborhood app blew up. A house 2 streets over was burgled during the outage. Alarm wires cut clean. They hadn't been chasing a random witness. They were chasing the only witness who saw their faces. Friday night, I stayed home. I bought a compact power bank and 2 bright LED work lights. I checked every lock twice, telling myself it was over. Around 11 p.m., the power went out again. I didn't freeze. I grabbed the lights, my phone, and ran into the small windowless bathroom downstairs, locking the door. I dialed 911. Within minutes, I heard them at the back door, working the lock, low and methodical. I had 10 seconds. I unlocked the bathroom door, leaned into the hall, turned both LED lights on at full blast toward the back entry, and locked myself back in. Through the door, I heard a sharp curse, then a lower voice. "He's still here." Footsteps scrambled, a door slammed, an engine turned over and sped off. 2 minutes later, police arrived. They caught 2 of the crew that night. Later, an officer dropped a detail. One of the suspects had ties to a local HVAC company. On his phone were addresses, schedules, and notes on which houses sat empty. Ours was listed. So was the neighbors. Nobody gave us the full picture. But I keep coming back to a smaller memory. A guy in a company polo standing in our kitchen a week prior, writing on a clipboard while my mom handed him coffee. Ordinary. Forgettable. The kind of 5 minutes you'd never think to be afraid of.